The bombshell reports on September rain, the bombshell reports on Russian interference that should have saved America. Tell us about this.
Oh, thank you so much, Tom. It's always so nice to be back. I was thinking that people's eyes glaze over when we talk about this stuff. So I thought one of the easy things we could do is send your viewers after this program is over to Twitter X, go to Watch Tenet Now, TENET now, and you'll see that there's this like time warp. It's frozen on September 4th. And September 4th was the day of these bombshell indictments, this bombshell FBI affidavit. And what it revealed was this quote unquote conservative media outlet, Tenet Media, was actually being paid millions of dollars by the Russians to Russians working for RT, which you know has been revealed to be Russian state media, basically Putin's media machine propaganda outlet, which was also this RT, these employees were also linked, according to our intelligence services, directly to Russian military intelligence. They had a $10 million budget to pay YouTube influencers through this cutout called Tenet Media. And all they did all day long, and I invite people to look at this timeline, frozen on September 4th when the indictment came out, all they did all day was pro-Russian, anti-Ukraine, anti-liberal democracy, anti-trans, anti-everything that is decent or was decent about America. And that's all they do. But they mask it as conservative media. They do a very good job of sort of papering over what they do. But if you pull back and you zoom out, all you'll see all day is Russian propaganda. And why does it matter? Because the richest man in the world was retweeting the influencers who took money from the Russians, interacting with the Tenet Media account itself. And so what does that make Elon Musk, who of course, you know, bought Twitter? It makes him the biggest, you know, Russian bot in history. And so that to me was like an easy place to start. Just go and look at the work that this media outlet did. And of course, it was based in Tennessee. Some of the influencers you may have heard of, Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, they denied that they knew where the money was coming from, but they were getting paid $100,000 an episode. And so, as you know, Tom, as a podcaster, as a blogger, that's a pretty good chunk of change.
Yeah, per episode. Yeah, for sure. Was that last year? You said September 4th?
So that was November 4th of 2024. And 2024. Why it's so interesting and why I decided to put out a compilation of all the reports I wrote at that time is because it just got papered over. The shotgun propaganda coming out of Trump and all the, all the MAGA gang papered over the real work that was being done by our intelligence agencies. And it was shortly after that kind of very bizarre, quote unquote, assassination attempt. So everybody was, looking over there and not looking at the incredible work that our Justice Department had done, our FBI had done. And I'm going to talk about the FBI work because it's really important. Our Treasury Department was involved. They ended up sanctioning 10 people involved in the RT promoting of this media company. And also our State Department issued the most incredible words that I needed as I was doing this work, and that is that foreign influence activities are not journalism. And these were foreign influence activities. And everybody from J.D. Vance to Elon Musk to, Tucker Carlson, they're all screaming, oh, freedom of speech, censorship. Well, our own State Department said these were foreign influence activities. This is not. I mentioned Tucker Carlson because the operation that I'm going to talk about next, which was the doppelganger seizure of doppelganger domains, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. They identified 2,800 influencers that these Russian, basically the people heading these operations were basically watching thousands of influencers throughout the world with the assumption that people were paid. And among them, we learned from Justin Trudeau was Tucker Carlson. So we had all this information, and I thought finally we were going to do something with it, because the war that we've been engaged in, we've been a target nation of information warfare. And I thought maybe we're now going to have the ammunition to at least let people know how much their minds are being manipulated. And I'll talk about the doppelganger operation if you'd like me to.
Sure. Yeah, I've been doing this show for 21 years, and it seems that prior to the election of Donald Trump in 2016, that the conservative/Republican politicians and the conservative media had been fairly anti-Russia, anti-Soviet Union, anti-communist. And it all changed in 2016, 2017. That seemed to be, late 2016 through the summer of 2017. That's when it seems like it all changed. And I know that there was a big change, with many of the other media operations out there, including RT and others, right around that time. Is it that Trump brought Russia in, or is that Russia started having a bigger influence, or do you want to just segue to your next piece, because that's going to speak to
no,
that?
that's really great. I learned something recently. I'd have to look at the year. I want to say around 2012. Pat Buchanan wrote something called Russia's paleo-conservative moment. And all of a sudden, there was this shift right around a decade ago where there was a number of conservative voices suddenly leaning in toward Russia. And I'll tell you why. They were leaning in over, traditional family values, conservatism. This is kind of what the mask was, but what it really was a comfort level with white supremacy and a comfort level against gender fluidity. And suddenly they found an ally in Putin. And I think if we zoom out, what we'll really find is a fossil fuel ally. And then they found the ideology and the narrative with traditional family values to tie it together.
Yeah.
So right around a decade ago, that was going on in conservative circles. And absolutely what we learned in 2016 was, of course, there was another operation like the one I'm about to describe, the Internet Research Agency operation, where they had teams of bloggers in Russia, St. Petersburg, working 24/7 in advance of the election. Hillary bad, Trump great,
No, I get
Bernie's
it.
all right.
So we
everything to divide us up.
Right. We have about 3 minutes here until we hit a hard break. So go for it.
Perfect. So essentially what happened is all of a sudden we're seeing all these people in Trump's orbit retweeting this operation, retweeting these accounts that were pretending, some of them to be, American conservatives, but anybody paying, if I could figure out this was coming from Russia, and our intelligence agencies and our own, Senate report and GOP-led Senate report was telling us these were Russian operations, then you would think people like Mike Flynn and Don Jr., who were interacting with these accounts, would know. And so there was, multiple operations at that time, tying people like Roger Stone and Peter Thiel operations, MAGA 3X, all that stuff. I've written exhaustively about it, and I can give your viewers links if they want to learn more. So that was one piece of it. So what they do is they keep on duplicating these operations. So the same day on September 4th, where we learned that a quote unquote American media company was actually taking $10 million from RT. We also learned that our U.S. agencies basically seized 32 domains. They use words like doppelganger, and all it means is that it looks like The Guardian, it looks like Washington Post, but these were operations from Russia to do the same thing I just described with Tenet, where basically they are putting out anti-Ukraine, pro-Russian, anti-Biden content. But what happened on that day, on September 4th, 2024, is a 277-page affidavit dropped where we learn what the FBI learned. And in granular detail, we see all the internal memos from the Russians doing this operation. And the sad thing, Tom, is they knew us better than we knew ourselves.
Yeah.
They knew Biden was leading a good economy. And in their own words, they said he's feeding the rednecks. For them, that was a problem. So in their own internal documents, they start talking about maybe we should create a proxy war, and they throw out some ideas. And so it's very distressing to read how clear-eyed the Russians were about our vulnerabilities, and they didn't just attack the U.S.
Yeah, we have just 1 minute left. So the federal government, the U.S. government figured this out and put a stop to it. Now that Trump's back in office, where are we at?
Well, I'll tell you where we at. I tried to get some information for one of my vetting members from an old report of mine where I tallied up the Russian interference by the numbers, and the links don't work. Try going to the State Department, hitting a link from October, and the page says, "We're sorry for the inconvenience. This information no longer exists." So that's how we're doing. That's
so
where
Trump
this is
and Putin
headed.
have shut down the U.S. government's investigation into the Putin operation. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, they've removed sanctions, and yeah, nothing's going to happen. And interestingly, Tom, they only indicted Russians. They didn't indict the Americans to date that were actually working on these operations. But essentially, we know that you were talking earlier, and all I could think is that we learned on February 28th that the KGB won the Cold War when America surrendered to Russia in full view of the world when Zelensky was in the White House. So, nothing's going to happen. These will be shut down. I'm certain of that.
Yeah, and this kabuki theater that we're seeing right now around Trump talking to Putin and Zelensky. Heidi Siegmund Cuda, Betty Dangerous, BETTE, dangerous.com. Get over there. Check it out. It's a free newsletter. You're going to love it. It is extraordinary. Heidi, thanks so much for dropping by.
Thank you, Tom.
Always great talking with you. We'll be back.